Hey there, my name is Megan and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a video recommending my favorite YA fantasy series to read around Valentine's Day. So if you know anything about me, you know that I am not a big romance reader, but I really do enjoy good, solid romances in my fantasy books because I feel like it makes the story and the characters more believable and everything come full circle. So I'm really excited to share with you these books and series that have really good romance in them. The first series I'm going to be talking about is The Winter's Trilogy by Marie Rakoczy, and those books include The Winter's Curse, The Winter's Crime, and The Winter's Kiss. In this story, we follow Kestrel, and Kestrel is the daughter of a really powerful army general of this conquering nation. And when this conquering nation took over neighboring countries, they enslaved all of the native inhabitants. One day, Kestrel is wandering through the market with her, friend or maidservant, and she comes across a slave auction, and she ends up buying a slave boy named Aaron. And as the story progresses, Aaron and Kestrel develop this romantic relationship, and towards the end of the book, we learn that Aaron is actually harboring secrets of his own, and the story kind of goes from there. This book actually has a really sweet romance because we don't really usually see romances where it's the guy that's the slave. It's usually the female or something of that sort. So it was interesting to have those roles that were reversed. The second book, which is The Winter's Crime, I read last year, and it has one of the most angst-driven plots I've ever read because we have these two characters that care about each other, and we have these decisions being made that are in the best interest of the empire, but the characters don't understand each other's decisions, and they're having to lie to each other so that they don't hurt one another. And there was just so much angst in the second book that it is a perfect read for Valentine's Day. The next book I'm going to talk about that would be great to read for Valentine's Day is Graceling by Kristin Cashore. This is definitely a staple book in the YA fantasy genre, and there are two more companion novels that go with this book, but I have not read them. But I read Graceling several years ago, and I actually did enjoy it. In this book, we follow Katsa, and Katsa is graced, meaning that she holds some sort of extreme skill that other people in the kingdom do not have. In this case, she is a killer. And because of her skill, Katsa is employed by the king. Eventually, Katsa meets Poe, who is a prince who's graced with combat skills. The relationship between Katsa and Poe is very sweet and very slow burn, and it does take up the majority of the story. And in the end, something does happen to Poe, and Katsa has to make a decision whether she wants to stay with him or not. It really showed that Katsa had a lot of compassion and love for Poe, and that no matter what happened to him, she would stay with him, and I really like that about the story. So if you are looking for a good romance fantasy, I would definitely recommend Graceling. The next book that has a really great romance in it is The Daughter of the Pirate King by Tricia Levenseller. I really enjoy pirate and sailing books. However, this book I actually was not a huge fan of. It was way more romance heavy than sea life pirate heavy, which is what I was looking for when I went into it. But if you are looking for a book that is filled with a really good romance, it actually did deliver in that respect. This follows a main character named Alosa, who is the daughter of the Pirate King, and she goes on this mission to find this map that the enemy might have that leads to buried treasure. In order to do that, she purposely allows herself to get kidnapped by the enemy, and after she gets captured, she ends up falling for the very attractive first mate named Raiden. I enjoyed the banter between Raiden and Alosa. I thought that was probably the best part of the story. It's kind of like a hate to lovers not really trusting each other, but in the end they fall in love kind of story. So while the pirate/sea life aspect of this book was not very good in my opinion, I enjoyed both of the characters and how their relationship developed. The next series I'm going to be talking about is The Wrath and the Dawn by Renee Ahdieh. This is a Middle Eastern inspired fantasy. It follows our main character, Shahrazad, who agrees to marry the Caliph, or the king of this nation, and he is known for marrying girls and killing them the next day. So the reason that Shahrazad decides to marry him is because he married her best friend and ended up having her murdered the following day. So she wants to find a way to take revenge on this king. Believe it or not, after the first night, Shahrazad does not get killed, and the only way that she stays alive is she ends up telling the Caliph stories that really entertain him. What I enjoyed about this book is that Renee Ahdieh made the Caliph, named Khalid, seem like a real jerk at first. And if you don't understand what was going on with him and the backstory to why he was making these decisions of having all these girls murdered, then you would think he was just a crazy psychopath murderer. But as the story goes on, it is revealed why he's doing these things, and our main character Shahrazad learns what's going on, and it completely blows her perspective on the type of person she thought Khalid was. And the romance of this is really great because it's very slow going. They sit at night and talk and have conversations and tell stories, and it isn't a initial attraction type of relationship. They fall in love slowly as time goes on, which is one of my favorite romances to read about. I thought that the romance in this was really well done, and I really enjoyed it. If you are looking for good romance in your fantasy, then I suggest picking up A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Brigid Kemmerer and the sequel. A Heart So Fierce and Broken. This series has a really great romance between Harper and Wren, or Beauty and the Beast. At first, they really don't like each other, they really don't trust each other, and as they get to know each other slowly and over time and go through experiences, their relationship does develop and they do fall in love. In Heart So Fierce and Broken, we follow Gray, which is Wren the Beast's guardsman from the first book. We follow his perspective, and he ends up falling in love with a girl named Liamara, which is the princess of a enemy neighboring nation. Bridget Kemmerer is known for writing really sweet romances. I've read 2 of her other contemporary books, and she just does a really good job of bringing together characters who you wouldn't think would be attracted to each other in the first place, or who even downright don't like each other in the first place, and showing how their relationship develops and how they get to know each other. Both of these books do a really good job at that, and if you're looking for a fantasy that is saturated in romance, then I highly suggest this series. The next series I'm going to share with you, you might not think as a series that you would read around Valentine's Day, and that is the Shattered Sea trilogy by Joe Abercrombie, and those books include Half a King, Half the World, and Half a War. This trilogy follows several different characters, and each book focuses on a different character and their story. Half a King follows Yarvi, who is a prince, and he is born with a deformed hand, and therefore he is looked down upon in the kingdom, and eventually he is banished and ends up working as a slave on a ship rowing, and he gets involved in all of the politics of this war within this kingdom. While there are romances in all 3 of these books, the best romance takes place in the second book, Half the World. This follows our main character, Thorn. And Thorn is a girl who is made to fight, and she ends up getting accused of murder, and the only one that can help her is Yarvi, our character from the first book. So she embarks on a journey with him. Along with Yarvi and Thorn and a whole slew of others is Brand. And Brand is the exact opposite of Thorn. He thinks of himself as a failure and he hates to fight, and there is this animosity between Thorn and Brand in the beginning of the book, but as the story develops, they end up falling in love. So it is definitely a hate to lovers romance with these 2 characters, and I thought that out of the 3 books, it was extremely well done and the most enjoyable romance plot-wise out of all of 3 books. But like I said, every single book does have a romance in it, but the romance between Thorn and Brand is definitely the most prevalent in the second book in the series. But the series as a whole is a load of fun and really quick to get through, and I highly recommend it regardless. The next series I suggest if you're looking for a good fantasy Valentine's read is The Remnant Chronicles by Mary E. Pearson, and those books include The Kiss of Deception, The Heart of Betrayal, and The Beauty of Darkness. In this world, we follow Leah, who is 17 years old, and at the beginning of book 1, she runs away from her homeland to escape a prearranged marriage, and she runs away to this small town. And while Leah is in this small town, she befriends 2 different guys, Caden and Raph. One of these is actually an assassin who's been sent to kill her, and the other is the prince that she was supposed to marry and stood up at the altar. And she ends up developing feelings for both of these guys, and they her, but she has to slowly work through what's going on in her life and her feelings for both of these guys. As the series progresses, there is actually not a love triangle, so to say, because one of the guys ends up falling in love with somebody else, and the relationship between Leah and the other guy goes through a lot of conflicts and a lot of things they have to work through before the end of the series. I really enjoyed this series when I read it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I liked all of the characters. It had good romance in it, but at the same time, I felt like it was equally split between the romance and the action and the politics, which is my favorite type of fantasy to read. Alright, so those are all of the YA fantasy series that I recommend if you're looking to pick up a good book around Valentine's Day with good, sweet romance in them. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have not already subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, as well as the bell icon so you can be notified every time I post new videos, and I will see you soon in another one. Goodbye!